couple of years ago, I had terrible credit. Terrible credit. Many factors to this. Okay, one, I didn't have much credit history. And then on top of that, the credit history I did have was very negative. Okay, I also had some fraudulent things happen with my credit. People used my social security number. People used my information to apply for credit cards and to get loans. Like, it was bad news bears. So I had a credit score that was something like 500 or something like that, like something terrible. It was either upper 400s or low 500s. That's a terrible credit score, if you don't know. Now, I want to say this off the top. I hate the idea of credit. I hate the idea of credit scores. I hate the fact that that's how things work. I hate that, in order to buy a house or in order to buy a car, this day and age, you have to have this credit history. And basically the credit history just means you're capable of borrowing money and paying it back. Okay? And if you don't borrow lots of money from different, companies and pay it back on time, you have terrible credit. So and then it affects you being able to make any big purchases at all. So this hindered me for a long time. It's one of the reasons probably why I don't own a house yet at 35 years old. Now, what I wanted to do in this video, though, or podcast, however you're listening, is give somebody who maybe was in that sort of position a few little tips. I'm not a financial expert or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you how I did it, and it's pretty basic stuff, but a lot of people don't know where to begin, okay? So first of all, if you have zero credit whatsoever, the best thing you can do is go get a credit card from your bank. It's called a secured credit card. And it's basically a debit card, okay? Because what you do is you put all the money that you could borrow from this card, you get a credit limit of like $300. And you give $300 to the bank to keep for you to back up this card, right? And so this is just a way you can build credit. So if something were to happen where you didn't pay your bill on time, you didn't pay off this credit card, that money is there for them to cover the loss. So it's not like real credit. It's kind of like baby credit. It's like halfway credit. It's just establishing that you can spend money on the credit card and then pay it off on a regular basis. So that's one thing. That's one thing you can do if you're just a person who doesn't have bad credit. Like, you don't have bad things on your record. You don't have delinquent accounts or anything, but you just never had any kind of credit, no credit card, no car loans, anything like that. That is a way to start building credit, because they're not going to give you a credit card to build credit with, because most people will say, oh, you need to get a credit card and pay the balance off every month. Yeah, that's great, but you can't get a credit card without some kind of credit history. So that's how you build a credit history. That's one way to do it. So that's okay. So that was one thing that I did. But the most important things that I did was this. I went and I got a full copy of my credit report from my bank. And if you don't have a bank, you can usually get a pretty good idea by using one of the apps. Like, personally I use Credit Karma, but there's a bunch of them out there. This isn't an advertisement for Credit Karma. There are tons of different credit monitoring apps where you can monitor your own credit and see where your score is and look at how much you owe to different creditors and things like that. Okay, so the most important thing that I did is, and that you'll want to do if you have bad credit, if you have a bad credit history resulting in a low score, is you want to go find all these companies that you owe money to. Okay, this is if you have, maybe you had something years ago that you um, got on some sort of credit and you never finished paying it off and it ended up going into collections. That's one of the worst things you can have on your credit. And I had quite a few of those affecting my credit in a bad way. From when I was younger, I think one time I had a gym membership that I reneged on, and it was like, hundreds of dollars that they said that I owed them because I didn't finish out the contract. Things like that, okay? So I had a couple of these things. Anything that you have that's like that has gone to collections, you need to call those collections agencies, and this is what most people don't think to do, okay? You can negotiate how much you pay them. And I don't mean just negotiate a payment plan, I mean the total amount that you pay them. So you can call them up, say you owe them $300, all right? You have a bill that went to collections, it says $300. Well, what you do is you call them and you say, hey man, I don't have $300 to pay you, but if you're willing to settle this account, I'll give you $100 right now, right? I'll give you $100, we'll just call it even, and you take it off my credit report. And most of the time, they're willing to accept it. Most of the time. At a substantially lower amount than you originally owed them. This is key. Call them and do this. Don't just pay it. Call them up. Call them and say, hey, I can pay you half of that. I don't have that amount of money. I'm sorry, but I'd love to get this off my record. You call them up and you negotiate, okay? They might say, we'll take $150, Then you say, all right, you know what I mean? It's still 50% less than you originally owed them. So this is what you do. I did this, and I probably had a couple $1,000s that I owed to companies, and I ended up paying less than $1,000 total, okay? To get these things cleared off my credit report. Now, it takes a little while once you pay them off. It could take a couple weeks, could take a couple months before you see it removed from your credit report, but you'll start seeing very quickly your credit score rise. I have changed my credit score in the past, I'd say 3 years, by 250 to 300 points. That's huge amount, and not that long of a time. So I did that. Okay, that's the first thing you do, is you go to all the collections and you go to any people that you owe money to and you try to offer them a settlement. Okay, take care of those things first and foremost. At the same time, you want to check if anything on your account is fraudulent, which there was on mine. Okay, there was credit cards that I never applied for. You need to dispute those, and there's little if you get one of these credit apps, right, they will give you links to dispute anything you think is fraudulent. And I had a few of those, quite a few, that were affecting my credit. So that's what I did. I went in there and I disputed each one, and I'm pretty sure all of them were removed, because they can go through, they have you, when you dispute it, they basically have you put in information that kind of verifies if the person who took it out was really you or not, and they'll remove it from your credit report. If it's really not you, they'll remove it. Okay, and then another thing you need to do. I had another thing that was fraudulent in a way. So I had a settlement with my ex-wife where the balance of a car that we had when we were married, when we got divorced, she kept the car and she totaled the car. And in our divorce decree, it said that she was responsible for all costs with the car. Well, when she totaled the car, she never finished paying the balance, and there was thousands of dollars left to pay on it, okay? And it fell on me, and it wasn't supposed to fall on me. So I had to clear that up. I had to call, and this is just, most of this that you're going to have to do is just making phone calls, okay? That's most of it. And like I said, paying some money probably, but not near as much as you think you would have to pay. But making a lot of phone calls, man, it sucks, but you do it. I'm telling you, your credit score will jump quickly. So along with taking care of those things that were hurting my credit really badly, I was using the secured credit card. Another thing you can do is, if you are married or you have someone close enough to you that you trust and that trust you, see if they will add you as an authorized user on one of their credit cards. When they do that, their credit is counted as your credit. So say they have a credit card with a $10,000 limit. Now you have, as a person, as an entity, has that $10,000 credit limit. Okay, even if you never use their card, you're getting the benefits of owning and using that card, even if you never touch the card. That's what I did with my wife. I added my name to her credit cards. She had pretty good credit. She pays her bill off every month, so it affected my credit positively. That is another huge thing, right? To build credit. And then the last thing is, there's a lot of little things that don't affect your credit in a huge way, like these other things, like the derogatory marks and the credit history. Those are the biggest, okay? Having bad things on your credit and delinquent accounts, things in collections, and having not a very robust credit history, right? Those are the most important. Those are the biggest things that will affect your credit in a bad way. But then there's smaller things, like what's it called? Hard inquiries. Okay, hard inquiries are what happen every time you apply for a credit card. So if you apply for any credit card, an Amazon credit card, a Walmart credit card, any credit card whatsoever, if you get your credit checked to try to buy a car, this is another hard inquiry. Try to keep these to a minimum. They stay on your credit report for up to 2 years usually. And I made the mistake of trying to get a loan for a car and letting them run my credit. And a lot of things, what a lot of auto dealerships will do is when they run your credit, it's not just one hard inquiry. They run they use a system that checks your credit, that checks what kind of loans you qualify for through 5 different banks. And so those count as 5 hard inquiries on your record. You don't want more than 5, in a 2-year span. So if you go to buy a car, make sure that they're not using that system that checks with a bunch of banks at once. Make sure they're just going through one bank to see if you qualify for a loan, not 5 or 6 or 8. And that's something I learned the hard way. But like I said, these hard inquiries are one of the lower level things that affects your credit. They're not as big a deal as the other things I talked about. So that's just kind of once you get everything else in order, just be mindful of that. Be mindful of applying for too many credit cards, because every time you do, your credit takes a little ding. Even if you're approved, it doesn't matter if you're approved or not. You get a little ding on your credit score just for applying for new credit. I don't know why. It's just that's the system. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the system. I hate that that's how the system works. I hate that it works this way, that you gotta... I have a more conservative mindset, fiscally. I think that, it's if you don't have the money, then you shouldn't buy the shit. If you don't have the cash right now. But things have been made so outrageously expensive that most people could never afford anything without credit. And then, like I said, to get credit, you have to build credit without any credit history. It's impossible. It's ridiculous. So I hate it, but you got to play the game, unfortunately. Unless you have a huge bank account, Scrooge McDuck, pile of gold where you can just buy things cash, you're going to have to play the game. So, anyway, this has been my little tidbits of wisdom. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think it could help some other people, please share it. I'm just a regular guy who's been through this stuff, so that's the tips that I have. My credit score is now considered good. It's not excellent yet. It's very close to excellent, though. I have a 740 credit score, I think, and that's just under excellent credit. So I went from very poor to excellent, or almost excellent, in the span of about 3 years of actually focusing on it. So, anyway, if you found this video useful, please share it, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you're into what I do here, which is daily. I post a new video or podcast where I just talk about whatever's on my mind. And sometimes it's useful things like this, and sometimes it's a movie review, and sometimes it's just a random news story, or, you know, just what I've been thinking about that day. So if you're into that sort of thing, if you want to stick around, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching / listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.